Johnson, Intel's futurist, and I want to welcome you to the robotics panel at CE Week 2014. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't be with you today, but I wanted to introduce you to Jimmy. Jimmy is a 21st century robot. He's open source and 3D printable. The idea behind the 21st century robot project is that you can take the open design files, design your robot to look how you want it to look, and then you can also download apps for the software so that you can actually customize your robot just like you would customize your smartphone. So the idea is that everybody could have a robot, and everybody's robot could be an individual, and it could be personalized. So again, I apologize for not being with you today, but I'll pass it over to Lance. Have a great panel.
Wow. Well, that's it. That was the coolest thing we're going to see all day. No. I'm Lance Ulanoff. I'm Chief Correspondent with Mashable, and I'm here with an esteemed robot panel. We're going to talk about, the title of this thing is Goodbye, Rosie, the era of the next-gen home robot. These are guys who are either watching or deep inside the cutting edge of robots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce each one of you, and then you can speak while I introduce you. Speak just a little bit. Let everyone know what you're doing. So I'm going to start right next to me with Davin Sufer. Sufer, right? He's the CTO for WowWee. Hopefully you've heard of that company.
Thanks, Lance. So basically, we've been looking for quite a number of years at what we can do with robotics. Bigger focus on the entertainment side. Our robots are fun, they're entertaining, they usually have some personality, and we're just now starting to touch on some useful things that they can do in the home.
Yeah, and they're the people that brought you the Robo Sapien, the first farting robot.
Correct. As I said, useful things in the home.
Right next to him, we have Philip Solis, who's the research director at ABI Research. Philip?
Hi, I'm an industry analyst at ABI Research, and I cover many different areas, especially around mobile technology, but one of the areas I've been covering since 2006 has been consumer and personal robotics. So I've watched the industry evolve quite a bit over the last several years.
And right next to him, we have Dr. Graham Taylor, who's the director and head of Wow Stuff Labs.
Thanks, Lance. We've done a variety of robots, some that look like robots, some that don't. We did a monkey that sat on his shoulder, and it farted as well. We're here at this show with a car racing system that uses artificial intelligence. So we're doing a lot of work at the moment, applying artificial intelligence to solve problems and make things work better.
And right next to him, Nader Hamda is the Ozobot founder and CEO, correct?
Yes, Nader Hamda, but yes. So we were looking for ways to, when we wanted to introduce robots to the world and look at things from the past and things from the present, trying to find ways that we can bring social gaming back. And we looked at apps. We looked at how apps were really creating the solitary gaming experience. And we thought of how can we bring social gaming back? And we looked at the robot as a vehicle for us to bring social gaming back, to bring classics and to bring innovative, cutting-edge app games to the old and to the new.
So I want to start with Davin because WowWee probably has, of this panel, has the longest history in consumer robotics. I mean, I think, what year did the Robo Sapien come out?
That was about 10 years ago.
All right, so a decade ago, a robot that was kind of remarkable for its time. It was cute looking, interesting, and actually sold really well. And sort of, we all felt like that was the beginning of something, but we haven't really gotten super far in consumer and home robotics since then, with some exceptions. So what's your perception of what's happened or what's gone wrong in the last 10 years?
I think there are a lot of really key technologies that are only now becoming very widespread and really hitting kind of the mainstream. I think there's a lot of things like, we talked earlier, Wi-Fi, things like these smart devices and all the sensors they brought to the table. It's all now coming to the forefront in a way that could be commercialized in these types of products.
And Philip, as a guy who's watching the market, I mean, you're seeing a change. Is there an acceleration of change in the robotics industry?
I think for some of the lower cost robotics, like you just said, the mobile device technology has accelerated the way that consumer robotics can lower their costs and add in a lot more sensor technology.
Well, one of the things I wanted to point out before I keep moving along is that one of the key reasons that we are seeing this big change is the advent of tiny, low-cost sensors. And virtually everybody in this room right now is carrying part of robotics technology, because if you have a smartphone in your pocket, it has accelerometers within it. It kind of knows its position in space. And that's a robot technology. And the fact that you can get that in a $199 product is a big innovation. Now, so Graham and Nader, to a certain extent, you guys have come into the robotics area later, but I'm guessing you're acting on the opportunities that you're seeing. So maybe you could talk, Graham, a little bit about what you've seen and why you're excited.
Yeah, well, we think the public perception of robots tends to be kind of cyclical. It goes through periods where people are really hot for them, and then it tends to drop. And I think part of that is because in the past, robots have actually disappointed a little, with exceptions. RoboSapien was a fantastic success. Most of what WowWee does is absolutely brilliant, but a lot of the time, the technology hasn't been there to make it a really compelling experience. Now that's changing a lot, and we can see just today, I got news reports from Hamleys Toy Store in London, which is the most iconic store in the UK, and they've just released their top 10 toys for Christmas. There are 3 robotic products in there. That hasn't happened for a long time.
Well, one of the ways in which I think people are starting to help integrate robotic technology with everyday life and the home is by making it part of something that we're familiar with. For example, a company that's not here, represented here, iRobot, makes a robot vacuum and a robot floor mop. These don't look like the robots you read about and grew up reading about or seeing in movies. And certainly, the robot technology, Graham, that you're working on is inside a race car. Very familiar, and in fact, the entire environment of the game is super familiar, yet it has robotic intelligence inside each car.
That's right, and we strongly believe that artificial intelligence is most strongly applied when you're trying to fix one hard and fast problem. So in our case, it was how do you make a radio-controlled car that you can actually race at home in your living room? The answer is artificial intelligence to help you drive it around the track. So we were addressing a very specific issue with artificial intelligence.
And Nader, when the Ozobots are sort of another way of getting into robotics or bringing them closer to consumers by putting it together with something they're very familiar with using. And in your case, it's the iPad. Creating a game that works with your tiny robots, which I would guess kind of bridges a gap. I mean, is that what you thought? That's the best way to bridge the robotics gap, by putting it together with the iPad?
Yes, absolutely. That was one of the big ideas that we were looking at, was trying to find a need in this future that we are living in, and trying to find a need in robotics is kind of like an oxymoron. So we looked at it beyond that and trying to understand what are apps doing. And when I looked at even my own daughters, they're sitting there engaged with their app, and they're in a very solitary gaming experience. And we thought, okay, if we can now bring the avatar that they're playing with off the tablet and make it into a tactile gaming piece, we can somehow force social gaming back and kind of bring that old and the new together again. And we looked at the Ozobot as the vehicle to do that for us.
So you mentioned filling a gap. Philip, in your market research, where is the gap? Like, where do people desperately want robots in their lives?
Well, I think people do want task robots that can take care of a task at home that they don't want to do, like the vacuuming, something they can automate. But it's hard to do many of these tasks at a reasonable price point. So, volume-wise, the two of the biggest areas happens to be entertainment or toys and education as well.
How many in the audience have a robot at home? Okay, we've got three people. That's not a great percentage. Of course, you all realize you're driving robots, right? Your cars are full of robotics, so it's all around you all the time. So we talked about costs. iRobot in particular, when I spoke to Colin Angle, the CEO, many years ago about this topic, that became the sort of the box that he had to put everything in. He really wanted to bring robots to the home, but he wanted to sell it at $199 or $299 or something. He had this price point. So for any one of you, who's developing robots, how frustrating, how difficult is it to develop sort of cutting edge stuff and to keep it affordable? Maybe Davin, you can talk about that.
Sure. I think now that a lot of components and sensors have come down in cost, it's becoming more viable. But still, the mechanical systems, the labor required to assemble these products. It's ironic that robots have to be assembled, and that hasn't been automated yet. So there's a lot of cost there as well. So you could solve the sensor part. Just the intelligent part is coming as well. But building a system that can do something useful needs to have some volume, some size to it. So just picking something up in your home, it needs to be able to reach a table height. If it's talking to you, it needs to be at eye level. Materials and a lot of cost there.
SoftBank, probably 2 weeks or maybe 2 weeks ago, introduced a robot called Pepper, the emotional robot. But it's actually built by a French company called Aldebaran. And it's about 4 feet high. It's got emotions, hands move, it rolls around. And the guy told me he's going to sell it for $2,000. And he actually talked about the problem that you mentioned, that he plans on mass producing it, that he wants to build all the pieces in a way that everything is scalable for mass consumerism, which is really, with the exception of sort of robots at your range, in the sort of, especially the early days, hasn't really been done before. So, Graham, do you see that as a solution, or do you think that that's a pipe dream?
It's an interesting one. I think that the fact that technology is getting cheaper, more sensors are becoming available, processors are becoming cheaper, drives a certain trend in robotics. They're tending to go more and more top-down. So it's a very computer science approach. Let's throw more processing power at it. And it's very easy for people to get carried away with over-engineering their robots. Well, where we tend to come from, because we're in the toy industry, is trying to find clever ways of doing more with very little. So that's where artificial intelligence comes in. For instance, we worked on the Keep On robot, which was a $30,000 research robot. We wanted to make it into a toy. It was run by an Apple laptop, and we managed to get it to run from a microprocessor that was the same kind of thing you put in a dishwasher. We had 6K of microprocessing space, and 400 bytes of memory. That was it.
Not much. And, you guys kind of disagreed about something earlier when we were talking before the panel. A lot of roboticists, companies offload now the processing issues and control to a device like an iPhone. And I know that, Davin, your MiFi robot, MIP robot here is actually controlled via an iPhone through Bluetooth. Graham, your race cars are controlled through a physical controller knob, and so maybe you could just say, what are the benefits of giving people robotic control through a device they own like that, and maybe you can briefly counter.
Well, the benefits from my perspective...
No fighting, by the way.
The benefits from my perspective are huge. The type of gaming experiences and visual experiences that we're all getting used to and kids have come to expect are very rich, deep content experiences. And our controller that controls this robot is changing every day. So right now it might be a little drive system with a handful of games, but we can keep adding to that. And that's just an update that you don't even actually notice happening on your phone. And next time you open up the app, there's a surprise for you there. A static controller actually adds material cost to the product, and I find is less versatile than what we can do with a smart device now.
And I have played with MIP and controlled it through the iPhone. So Graham, you're very much on the other side.
We've done stuff using app control before, and in some cases it's definitely the way to go, and I think it works great with the MIP. For radio-controlled cars, actually, trying to do that through an iPhone isn't the most intuitive, and remote controls are a certain shape and certain style for a reason. So, although people ask us, why don't you make this app controllable, we wanted to make something that was actually practical for kids to use, easy for them to pick up and start playing with, and they didn't have to borrow Dad's iPad to do it. So everything in the box.
And I've seen the controller, and it looks really cute, and I think it will appeal to kids. But I actually don't think either one of you are wrong here. It seems like it's a kind of a use case thing. And Nader, in your case, you're putting the robot on the tablet. But had you considered at all, sort of, doing a bunch of the robots on the ground and just sort of letting them, interact, but then doing some app, maybe augmented reality app to go with them?
Yes, actually, we are looking at all different ways. We looked at, we didn't really want to be an RC product in any kind of form of it. So we were looking at the way we can have the robot react to patterns, lines, and even commands.
And there's right. I recall, can you draw like on physical paper and have
Correct.
them work? I kind of remember that. Do you have the robots sitting there?
Yeah.
Just hold one up so people can see what we're talking about here. They're really kind of tiny but adorable little things that can follow patterns, which, for robotic technology, I mean, that's one of their skill sets. If you've ever seen Lego Mindstorm NXT, it has one of the sensors within there is designed specifically to do that, but you do a lot more.
We looked at ways that we can make this intuitive. We wanted to, once again, with robots, we're looking at making it as simple as possible for the end customer. We are looking to go mass and appeal to a lot of different people. And one of the things that we were able to accomplish with it is allow the robot to memorize 500 different commands and then play them back. So they don't even need really lines or anything. They just need the ability to see optical codes, which is a series of flashing colors going into their sensors, and those flashing colors give them very specific commands and directions to perform, and they can go ahead and execute it on any kind of surface.
So Philip, why, we're sitting here, we're talking to a group of people who have primarily built toys. They're toy robots. Why is it so few companies, with the exception of iRobot, and we talked about WinBot, there's a window cleaning robot out there, and there's a handful, but it's not this explosive market that I thought it would be, home task robots. What is the problem?
It's the value you can get out of it. So it's what you can achieve at what price point. So, the better Roombas are, in the $400, $500 range. Same thing for the Scuba floor washing, $400 or so. And so, for many people, that's a bit too much. And even that, then you're still doing one task. So if you want to cover a couple of tasks that can be done, you're spending into the thousands now. So I think the market will pick up more when you can spend in the thousands, and then it can do many, many more
Right,
tasks.
which is the Rosie bot that we keep talking about. And we've seen a lot of different companies go into the home sort of care robot space. LG has a vacuum robot. Sony's been in this space. Sony actually had done some of the most interesting and innovative stuff in the robot space. It, in particular, had the Aibo, which was around a decade ago. It was, actually might have been before WowWee, and was the most complex home entertainment robot I had ever seen, and to date have seen, really. But it was expensive. It was $2,000, prohibitively so. Sony built the Curio, which was like the Jimmy robot from Intel, but it was about $80,000. Never went to market. And then they backed out. They left. So we end up with the smaller but yet interesting products. I don't know if you can tell us this, Davin, but what do you consider success in robot sales? You make something like the MIP. How many units do you have to sell to go, we just knocked it out of the park?
It starts at several 100,000 units. That's for us where we would like to be with our mainstream products, definitely.
How many Sapiens did you sell?
RoboSapien and the associated products like the dinosaurs as well.
Raptor, the Roboraptor, I love that.
That's right. We're well into over 5 million units sold, and they still sell now.
So in consumer electronics, I mean, millions is really what you're going for, but you'll accept hundreds of thousands if you can get it. Is that the same for you guys? I mean, you're a Kickstarter project right now. So in case you don't know, if you didn't check out what Graham is doing, here you can watch the video, which is very informative. I don't know what you do about Kickstarter. I'm not here to promote that, but he is on Kickstarter. So how do you measure success?
But not quite as successfully as WowWee, I've got to say, unfortunately. We would be happy with sales of hundreds of thousands, but yeah, it's that kind of ballpark. When you get something that resonates with people, it's a great success. And we've had more success, actually, when we've shied away from calling something a robot. So with our robotic shoulder monkey, we deliberately didn't call it a robot because that tends to skew it in terms of gender. People have a preconception, and we did very, very well with a robot product that we didn't call a robot.
Nader, would you be willing to say what you think?
Yeah, for us, we're very systematic in our growth plans. I mean, for us, for year one, we're looking to really introduce a very small number of units, about 100 to 125,000, because we really want to hear what the consumer wants. It has so many different capabilities and different ways we can go. So we're looking at almost a 1-3-6 plan where we really want to throw the product out into the market, understand where the demands are, where the needs are for us to continue to develop, and then kind of look at the revenue models after that.
I mean, there is a problem for robotics because they're expensive to develop, much more expensive than, say, an app. So you kind of have to churn through more money up front before you can break through. It's probably why a lot more people are doing app development. Philip, one of the things I just heard one of you guys say is the use of the word robot is kind of a no-no in products. Philip, what are they telling you out in the market? Do you have people say, no, we love robots and want to put them in our store and want to say, for sale, robots?
I mean, it's early in the market, so there's a lot of early adopters who do want a robot. So it's, it depends on the type of consumer. But, to that point, one of the toys I've seen is like a missile pod and a helicopter, and you have to remote control the helicopter and dodge the missile pod that's trying to shoot foam missiles at your helicopter. So it's a helicopter and a missile pod. It's robotic, but it's not sold as a robot. So.
Well, the other word that is popular in the marketplace is drone. If you can sell a drone, or you have one for sale, or you can talk about it in the media, people love that. People are very excited about it. They're both excited and terrified by drones. And we have Parrot, which is a company that traditionally sold headsets and sort of Bluetooth speakers, came out with the AR drone, which has a lot of robotic technology. Again, that's sensor technology that allows it to hover in space. But that's a word that's okay, apparently. You can say drone, but you can't say robot. Do you make a drone? I don't recall that.
We don't have a drone.
Would you like to make one?
Yeah, we think about it. We'd obviously love to be in that space. I think we'd come into that space if we had something very unique and different to do. It's getting quite crowded. But to your point, I think all the successful robots that you've pointed out have become products that we don't think of as robots. Like your dishwasher is a robot, your car you mentioned earlier, all these devices in our lives that are successful, you don't think of them as robots anymore.
So how many in this audience are afraid of robots? It's okay. If you're afraid, you can admit it. I personally think this is one of the things that's holding back. So the core idea of this talk is, the sort of, the new era of home robots, which, in order to succeed, at least in the American marketplace, have had to break down a sort of full-scale robot that might do a bunch of things into its core components. Philip, what do you hear about people's feelings and maybe the market reaction to a robot that is maybe too human?
Yeah, so in the U.S., definitely there's a little bit more of the fear. It's cultural. So in the U.S., a lot of the movies and the comic books and books and things like that have robots that are going haywire or doing wrong, and they have to be stopped, right? Terminator, things like that. In like a lot of Asian markets, like especially Japan, robots are always helpful and helping people.
That's head on. It's perfect because it's really what people in this room probably don't realize unless you've spent a lot of time watching Japanese culture or lived in Japan, is that they've always embraced robots. Robot cartoons going back to Gigantor, they were the hero, the savior, fly through the air. More recently, just a couple of days ago, Osaka University introduced a newsreader robot that is going to be in a museum, and it can speak multiple languages. Basically, it's an RSS reader. It kind of comes through, but it interprets it and speaks it. But it looks like a woman, sort of. Now, talk a little bit, because I kind of want each of your takes on this. There's a thing called the uncanny valley, and with that, you can't really talk about robots and humans and robots in the home without addressing the uncanny valley. And very simply, it's when things look almost human but not quite, and it creates a sense of revulsion. Nader, what is your feeling like, sense of the robots you see coming out of Japan and the issue with the uncanny valley?
Well, I definitely believe it is cultural, and over here we tend to our culture tends to look at robots in a very different way, and even when we developed our own Ozobots, we made a conscious effort to make it look vanilla. We did not want it to look human. We did not want it to look like anything in specific where you would have an opinion about it. We wanted to be extremely vanilla with it. But then eventually introduce skins. Like with everything else, everyone wants to add their own personal flair to something. And we wanted to be able to give that ability to the end customer, depending if they're from Japan or Zimbabwe or here. It doesn't matter.
People are not afraid of little rolling nubs, unless there's like 1 million of them and they're surrounding them. Then there's a little bit freaked out. Graham, would you have a robot like the ones you saw from Japan in your house?
I wouldn't mind having one in my house. I think what freaks people out about it is not knowing if it's a robot or not. So I saw in the news last week, and you wrote about it, Lance, the robot that just convinced 30% of people that it was a human.
Yes.
Passed the Turing test, and that scares people. It doesn't scare me so much as I think it would frustrate me. You know, I want to know when I'm talking to a robot. So with Siri on my iPhone, it's okay. I know I need to talk a certain way. I know I'm talking to a robot. I don't want someone to fool me, or something to fool me, into thinking I'm talking to a human being when actually I'm talking to a robot. So that's where the line gets a bit confusing.
You know that's coming, right? The robot that can fool you in both
Yeah.
ways. Davin, which do you think is more of a concern, the visual aspect or the intelligence aspect? Because they're two different technologies. One is really aesthetic, and the other is sort of the bits, the data, and the processing power on the back end.
So there's another side to this discussion, and that is that sometimes you have something that a robot or a toy dog or whatever you want to call it, like an Aibo even, and when it starts to do lifelike things, people start to expect it to be intelligent and to have intelligence. So intelligence can be very much in the eye of the beholder. So the bar might even be a bit lower than we think it is to fool someone, or to at least gain their imagination and have them think, hey, you know what? This thing actually is alive. It's looking at me. It's tracking me. It's chasing its ball. It might even be alive, even though it doesn't claim to be.
Well, I have noticed that people, even if they have a Roomba, a robot vacuum, they will start to call it he or she. It's very natural for them to do that. And the more it seems to evince some sort of emotion, even if it doesn't have it, or if they've programmed in a little bit of, the smart programmers, I think, put in a little something. Say if you kick a Roomba, I always wanted it to be like, oh, hey, like and they could do that. I have not kicked a Roomba, by the way, not on purpose.
When you knock Mip over, he does a similar
right,
sound
exactly.
effect.
Mip makes Mip. But I've noticed, of course, to your point, Nader, the cuteness factor is important. For the American buying public, robots in the home have to have soft edges. They sort of have to be cute or vanilla in order for it to work. So, by the way, at this moment, it would be so awesome if I could tear off my skin and reveal that I'm a robot. And how do you know? How do you know? Not going to happen. So I'm just curious, Philip, I want to ask you this question first. Google has bought like 6 different robot companies over the last 12 months. Do you have any idea what they're doing? Are they building the ultimate home robot? Are they working on toys? We know they're doing the robot car, blah, blah, blah. Car is going to drive itself. Okay, fine. But are they doing something more?
Yeah, I mean, they might be working very long term on home personal robots, and they may be working more medium term on a way to deliver packages off of a self-driving truck, and then have the robot in the robot truck come out and put it to your doorstep. But I think for them, the real plan is probably to develop cloud robotics. So this is basically, you have your intelligence in the robot that you need for, especially for real-time things. You can leverage a PC or a phone or a tablet to do more, and then you can leverage everything on the internet that you can connect to, services that will have to be standardized to really take off. And I think they're looking to corner the market on the development of cloud robotic services that will allow for robots to be lower cost and have lower development time, especially on the software side.
I mean, that's a little bit of, it sounds a little bit like you might be talking partially about telepresence robots, which connect people, and, you could sort of control, put the robot there, and then maybe it could connect to the network and control a presentation. But they're, the ones I've seen, like from Double Robotics, they're great, they're balancing bots, but they incorporate an iPad, and then they're using some, the sort of networking that you have to put your face there, but there isn't a lot of intelligence. In fact, Double doesn't even know how to get around the room on its own. I know that iRobot has Ava that can. But Davin, you know that Google bought Boston Dynamics, right? Have you seen some of the robots from
Big
Boston
Dog,
Dynamics?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, these are robots that carry things, that run faster than cheetahs, that can walk like a man. They're all like, if you want to see some of the weirdest robot videos, most of them have come from Boston Dynamics, Big Dog. I mean, Google has to do something with all that stuff, right? That's the kind of stuff that's supposed to be mobile.
That's exactly what you need when you have larger robots that need to walk around and interact in our world and be successful in that world. Lots of motors, lots of joints, lots of actuators, and very complex control systems to make sure that they don't injure people or break things or fall over.
So does anybody know? Does anybody actually know what Google's doing? Anyone? No one knows. Okay, we don't know, but we're all excited about it. So we're going to take questions in a little bit, but I'm wondering if each one of you, Philip, I'll start with you. Give me a little idea of what you see coming up next in robotics.
I think the personal robot has always been the real goal. And while we might not right away be able to get to a situation where...
Perfect timing. The future is scary. You hear the music?
Yeah. We might not have a situation where you'll be able to easily afford a robot that can pick things up off the floor and put them away and put dishes away from a dishwasher, but you'll have a robot that can be like another information source, and you'll be interacting with that, and it'll read your facial expressions so it knows what mood you're in, and it'll, instead of just having to say, to your phone to ask something, you can talk to a robot, it can interface with you like a person does.
Right, a companion, which is exciting, and I really do want that dishwashing robot, the one that empties my dishwasher. I want that now. Nader, you can maybe tell me a little bit of what's next in robotics, but I kind of want to know what's next from you. Maybe you could reveal something to folks here, something exciting.
Well, for us, it's the abilities to continue to have robots help us get social. Because I think it's we're always looking for robots to simplify our lives. But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we simplify our lives too much, we kind of get useless, and the robots take over. So I don't really want us to...
I'm completely happy with that.
Yeah, are you? That's kind of happening.
So Graham, maybe you, because you've had this robot sitting beside you for a while, and that's something that's coming up from you guys?
No,
or is that something you've had?
This came up a few years ago. I actually brought it along as an example of where DIY has come into stuff. I don't know if we're coming on to that next.
Right. So let me ask you a question about DIY then, because I feel like that's in tandem with the future of sort of the fully made stuff that comes into the home. But I also see it as kind of a problem. One of the best DIY kits, which is sort of an experiment kit, is Lego's Mindstorm, but there's certainly others. So what's on the horizon there?
Well, I think the 3D printing's the other big driver in the DIY scene. And I think it's a fantastic move on for the robotics development, because you've got people now who can create their own mechanics for robots, which have been out of their price reach before. And you've also got people that are developing robots from the perspective of, okay, we don't have much money, how can we do this a clever way? I brought this along because it's a hexapod robot. These have been around for a long, long time, but we found a guy on YouTube who had invented his own mechanism to get the same kind of motion and walking that normally takes multiple servos and a cost up here from 2 motors. So that's what happens when DIYers start getting involved in robotics. You don't throw technology at it, you try and find a clever workaround. And I think that'll progress robotics nicely over the next few years.
Davin, would you guys ever do sort of a DIY kit? Would WowWee ever put that out?
We've been looking I love modular robots. Like we've been trying to do some kind of modular robotics or swarm robotics where multiple things all interact and work together, where you could assemble something that does more than this, the sum of its parts. And again, exactly what Graham said, it's really about mechanical systems, and that's where a lot of the cost comes in. Now the sensors, the processors, the memory is becoming so cheap, you can do some amazing stuff, and we're looking at getting more than one of those in the box. I'll put it that way.
You reminded me, I did speak to a company, I don't know, a month ago that has these modular robots that are squares that can kind of move around on their own, then they connect to each other, then they turn into furniture. A table, a chair. I mean, just imagine, like your modular robot gets to you before you fall down and makes a nice chair for you, or suddenly another one comes up with a table, and then your dishwashing robot has emptied the dishwasher and the other one is cooking. I'm sorry, the minute I start thinking about this, it just sort of goes off. So we have a little bit of time for questions from the audience. So feel free to ask anything you want to know about robots, and I've been promised by all of them they can answer every single one of your questions. Yes, up front.
I saw you at Nader. I saw you, Ozobot, at the International Toy Fair, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. Would you or any of the panelists ever consider, again, seeing what like the next generation capabilities would be, like sponsoring like a hackathon of some sorts?
Absolutely. I mean, for us, the only way robots can really evolve is by having everybody engage in it, and introducing open SDK programs, hackathons, would only help engage the mass populace. Because right now it is just us working on it, but ultimately we want everyone to embrace it.
Right there.
Yeah. I just had a question. It seems like healthcare is a fertile area, and a lot of people are working in there because there's that need. We saw with smart homes, security was also a big driver for a lot of innovation there. Do you guys, if you think that's an area, what about issues around security or privacy? I'm thinking about people's health conditions or your home security.
Yeah, Philip, maybe you could start.
Yeah, so, I mean, healthcare is a big one for the home, like to monitor like the elderly in terms of being able to maybe also even to collect sensor information about their health, where they may not be able to use a smartphone as a hub because they don't have a smartphone. So, some robotics there, like also to remind them to take medicine, to check if they're taking medicine and report that to, one of their children, their adult children. So that's a big area. Yeah.
I'd just add, I mean, an area that I think is going to become really important for robotics is prosthetics and curing conditions. There's been some incredible work done with brain implants and human computer interfaces, neural networks. It's amazing. Alzheimer's, there's been some astonishing breakthroughs in the treatment of that. And prosthetics.
Right.
Materials are getting lighter, batteries are more efficient. I think there's going to be massive advances in
And
that
the
area.
intersection of 3D printing and robotics goes direct to prosthetics. Because really good prosthetics like the Luke arm that what's his name, Dean Kamen worked on, it's really, really expensive. It's probably the best prosthetic arm out there, but not many people are going to get it yet. But if you can print a 3D robot-controlled arm or prosthesis, that's a game changer, and we are seeing that. We are actually seeing that happen. So it's a huge deal. And just as far as development goes on health care and robotics, Japan has always been ahead of the U.S. because their population has been aging not faster, but they've been ahead of us. They've been an older population. We're now catching up. So I'm hopeful that will start to spark a lot more innovation on the healthcare side for robotics. Yes, go ahead.
I'm intrigued about the government intrusion into robots, whether we're looking at the drones or whatnot, or also maybe creating some way of controlling them or regulating them in a good way or a bad way. Can you talk a little bit about issues with regard to the government and robots? I mean, we obviously know about mass soldiers and things like that.
Who would like to take government and robots? Well, go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, I mean, some regulation is going to be needed for things like safety, especially if you're talking about UAVs. They're still trying to figure out, use of the airspace. There are safety issues, right? That, you're hearing these like ideas from Amazon, et cetera, and Google about maybe using UAVs to deliver packages. Yeah, you can do it, but mistakes can happen, and those blades can hurt people. So there needs to be regulation, of course.
And the FAA has heavy regulation on the use of drones. You can't fly them above 400 feet. You can't fly them in populated zones. The commercial use of drones has only been allowed for a handful of companies in very specific instances. So they tend to be much heavier on the side of regulation, at least on the flying robot side. I mean, we had this little discussion beforehand about iRobot and, because it is a tremendous military robot business, but those are robots out in the field. So does anybody have a feeling about robots in, talked a little bit about robots in like police work, which kind of changes things. I mean, I'm sure you guys have all seen that. You've seen the robots showing up on the news diffusing bombs. None of WowWee's robots can do that, right?
No, not yet.
Not yet. I mean, basically, we're just, I think that there isn't a lot of need for heavy regulation of the robots that you're thinking about because they don't exist yet for most people, most average people.
But we need to think forward.
Yes. More regulation immediately. That is the conclusion of this panel.
By the way,
Yes. Do we have any more time? We have time for another question. Oh, she's still, wait,
No,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say that at the Unmanned Systems Conference in May, they addressed law enforcement, not only law enforcement, but they also addressed like the fires that were in Australia and some of the other things on how unmanned systems were used. So we say drones, but it's not just flying drones, it's in all aspects.
Right. There's ones that go in the water, ones on land, et cetera.
And I know that there's a lot of talk about, teaching robots to feel, teaching robots to understand how not to be rude. And then they're doing studies about how to do this. Can robots be rude? Can we teach them to not be rude? Very shortly, it's a story about Asimo. Honda's Asimo is a 4-foot-tall humanoid robot. One of the latest innovations they have is teaching it politeness, so it doesn't freak people out. So when it delivers a tray of tea to people seated in front of it, it will actually stop, nod to each person, and then place down the tray, as opposed to what a computer would do: go, drop, go, which would freak people out.
The US Army researchers just put out a tender to try and call researchers to create a robot that can understand sarcasm. Good luck with that.
Look, I couldn't create children that could understand sarcasm. They don't get it. Are there other questions? It's hard to see out there, but I don't think. Any more?
Well, sorry, I don't want to hog the panel here, but one question, you guys brought up the 3D printing and the actuators getting really cheaper and doing more with less. You talked about Dean Kamen's brain-controlled prosthetic arm. I would like 2 extra arms, maybe a tail. Do you think human augmentation with robotics?
Actually, they have something already. A couple of companies are making something where you can strap it on the back and give yourself extra arms. So if you're lifting something up, you can have the extra arms hold it while you screw something in. And
Exoskeletons are actually pretty well known. Didn't an exoskeleton, guy wearing an exoskeleton, kick the first ball out at the World Cup? So it's happening. I don't want a tail from WowWee. I just tell you that right now. If you were thinking about that, I absolutely don't want that. And just can you roll out MIP for a second?
Sure.
As we're wrapping up here. So the thing that I like about MIP and all the robots that these guys are working on is that they give me hope, because this guy has it balances on 2 wheels. Do you remember the Segway? Does everybody remember the Segway? Yes. Same technology in the base. He's going off. He's going off. And you know, that was a recreation of something that happened with the Segway. So that technology now, which was thousands of dollars back then, balancing technology, is now inside of MIP. And in addition to that, he can respond to stuff. And that's, you know, with each of these robot innovators here, they're bringing technologies that were just dreams, you know, a decade and a half or a decade ago, and now they're in the palm of your hand, and they're affordable, and it's very exciting. I think we're gonna wrap it up. So I want to thank all of my panelists, MIP, Nader, good. Davin, Philip, Graham, Nader, all of you, thank you so much. Love talking robots with you, and thanks everybody for listening.